Today on Church Public, Biden's abortion executive order, and what does that mean? The Church of England forgets what a woman is, apparently. Pro-abortion group puts up a bounty for the Supreme Court justices after this decision regarding Roe. And the surprise study of the day, which isn't really a surprise, married young religious couples are less likely to divorce. Yeah, not surprising at all. But we'll talk about that too. I'm Matt Odegaard. Welcome to Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. I'm Matt Odegaard and really appreciate you stopping by today. I know your time is valuable and I want to respect that. I'm here to help you understand some of the current events from a Christian perspective, so we'll look at some of those and what they mean for us, especially focused on marriage and family. That's just what we happen to be focusing on today. So I'm glad that you stopped by. Hopefully you make it to the end. I think there is some encouragement amidst all the other craziness that's going on. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, give a 5-star review if you're on Apple or Spotify or YouTube or wherever you are. Really appreciate it because it helps. I want you to understand how to follow Jesus in this crazy world and exist in the public square. Be in the world, but not of it, which is increasingly kind of hard to do. So I want to help you understand how to do that from a Christian perspective, from a biblical perspective. As always, you can check my work. You can read the Bible. I actually encourage you to do that on your own. You don't have to trust me. You don't have to take it from me. There are people who have been around for way longer than me, who know way more than me, but we all come back to the Bible. I want you to understand where God's word is and how to access it. We'll even look at some of that today. So without further ado, let's get into some of the news. All right, Biden gives an executive order. Apparently, he is continuing the war on babies in this pagan death cult by putting out an executive order designed to aid abortion federally. It doesn't actually do that much, but we'll talk about just a little bit of it and what is in it. According to CNN, President Joe Biden on Friday signed an executive order aimed at protecting access to reproductive health services in the wake of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade and eliminating the constitutional right to an abortion. You know, I just have to stop for 5 seconds because of all the craziness that was in that particular statement. Reproductive health, that's a euphemism for killing babies. The Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade and eliminating a constitutional right to an abortion. It's not in the Constitution. That was kind of the point of the whole overturning Roe v. Wade. It wasn't in the Constitution. It's still not in the Constitution. Again, don't take my word for it. Go and check. Just go read the Constitution. Where's abortion in there? If you don't believe that, they say this comes from a right to privacy in the 14th Amendment. Go and read the 14th Amendment. Tell me about the right to privacy in there and how it relates to abortion. Go wait. I'll wait. Again, go and check. I'll wait. Even ask the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who also said, you know, it's not really in there. I'm paraphrasing there. But again, you can go and read her words about it because she had some, because it's not in there. So the Supreme Court finally agreed that abortion wasn't in there, but now we're putting it back in because it was in the Constitution in the first place. Everybody's going crazy. Anyhow, we'll continue on this CNN article. The executive order attempts to safeguard access to medication, abortion, and emergency contraception. It intends to protect patient privacy, launch public education efforts, I wonder what that's going to be, as well as bolster the security of and the legal options available to those seeking and providing abortion services. Continuing on in the article. There is no action, this is from CNN, there is no action the president can take to restore the nationwide right to an abortion in the wake of the Supreme Court's ruling. Right, because it wasn't in the Constitution. Continuing on in the article. Biden has acknowledged publicly his options to expand abortion access remain limited. Right. Continuing on in the article. The White House has dismissed several progressive ideas to protect abortion access, including allowing abortion providers to work from federal property. Now, just as an aside, if you missed this story, I didn't cover this because there's just too much to cover, but there were many people in the Biden administration and beyond who were saying, hey, maybe we should have abortion clinics pop up in national parks. No, that's not a joke. You can go and research this. This is an actual thing that they're proposing. We should have abortion clinics in national parks. Like, can you imagine? We're going to Yellowstone this year because they have abortion clinics in Yellowstone. Hi, Molech called. He wants his job back. Anywho, this is some crazy town. But according to the CNN article, White House and Biden have dismissed these progressive ideas because I hate to say they're kind of crazy, but they're kind of crazy. Anyhow, continuing on this article, and almost at the end of it, thank goodness, the White House has also reiterated the president does not support expanding the Supreme Court, as many progressives have pushed for. And to that I say, Good, because that was a bad idea from the start for both sides. People don't understand the legislative branch is kind of a thing, and you want it there to checks and balances, to give checks and balances to the executive branch and to the judicial branch. I should legislative first. I apologize. I meant to say judicial, but you get it. There's three branches. They're supposed to give checks and balances to each other. If you increase one by actually decreasing its efficacy, do the checks and balances stay? The answer is, of course, no. And then what's good as a check and balance? Because you don't have one. So then the powerful just bowl through whatever they want to bowl through, which just has never been a great idea in terms of history and government. All right, let's continue on here. Next story. Oh, this is this is an interesting one. So the Church of England, the Anglican Church, and of course, my caveat is I'm not an Anglican, I'm not a Catholic, I don't care that much, but this is an important issue. It's an important issue because it has repercussions, it has intimations into other denominations across all of the westernized countries, we'll say for sure. According to the Telegraph UK and the Church of England, they now have no definition of a woman. Period. Apparently they don't know what a woman is anymore. Apparently at one point they did, but now they don't. So this is in a written reply to a question submitted to the General Synod. A senior bishop said, although the meaning of the word woman was previously thought to be self-evident, additional care was now needed. I'm sorry. I don't even mean to laugh, but I don't know what to say to this. The church, which has been around for 2,000 years in various forms at this point, the Christian church, once knew what a woman was. It was, quote, thought to be self-evident, unquote. But now, because of things, additional care is needed to figure out what a woman is, evidently. I just, it's like it gets weirder and weirder and crazier and crazier. And I feel like we've gotten to the bottom at some points, and then you're like, nope. Just keeps going. All right, so continuing on, according to the Telegraph, the question was posed as the question was posed as institutions grapple with the ongoing debate surrounding rights and, quote, what is a woman? While the new stance has been welcomed by liberal wings of the church, not surprising, the comments have also provoked criticism. Also not surprising. I'm sorry, this is just a funny story. Okay, this is from the Telegraph. With gender-critical campaigners saying, quote, whether your starting point is biology or the Bible, end quote, the answer to the question of what is a woman remains the same. Yes, it does. It doesn't matter whether you're talking biology. It doesn't matter whether you're talking the Bible. Like, what is a woman is the same. Now, what I want to do, because we're talking about current events from a Christian perspective, is move this into the specifically Christian realm. And what I'd like to say here, just as a refresher and as a clarification, if I can, this is actually not a political argument. It may seem like it. It may seem like a cultural argument. It may seem like a political argument. It's not. And it's not even a biological argument, what is a woman? Because that obviously is clear, as the previous statement said. A woman is a female that bears children, period, pretty much. That's as good a definition as you're going to get, and it's completely accurate. But really, this is a theological argument. Why? Let's look at some Bible and then get to the answer of that. Genesis 1:27, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Genesis 2:18, then God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. Genesis 2:25, 22-25. The rib the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. Then the man said, this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Woman was literally created from man, not from the head, not from the foot, but from the side, so that they could stand side to side. Continuing on in Genesis 2, therefore, man shall leave his wife. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Therefore, man shall leave his father and his mother, hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. The man said, man, I'm struggling with words today. I apologize. Just trying to get things done here. And the man and his wife were both naked and unashamed. Continuing on in Genesis 5:2, male and female, he created them, and he blessed them and named them man when they were created. Then Jesus, when asked about marriage and divorce in Matthew 19, he said, have you not read that he, God, who created them, man and woman, from the beginning made them male and female? Jesus reinforcing the Genesis account that we just read from. This is consistent through literally the whole Bible. Continuing on in Matthew 19, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Does that sound familiar? It should, because it's from the Genesis passage we just read. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Jesus adds to this and says, what God has joined together, let not man separate. Also talking about divorce, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. Basically, a woman is an adult human female, which bears young. Theologically, from the first chapters of Genesis, a woman is the complement of man that is necessary for him to survive and thrive. Not good for a man to be alone. Woman is a companion that is fully necessary, especially in times of trouble. Read sickness and health, richer, poorer, etc. The two become one flesh, literally join in body and mind, and that is really a good thing. It is concerning, troubling, and super curious that an entire church denomination suddenly has no idea what a woman is. It's kind of important to understand what a woman is, because if you don't understand what a woman is, you can't understand what marriage is, which is where we get to all the trouble that we're in with marriage and family and babies. Because if you don't understand what a woman is, how can you understand what a baby is? Which is why it's so easy for people to just remove them from existence, which is really, really sad and things we shouldn't do. We should cherish all human life, and we should put a lot of value into the family. And we'll talk more about the family in just a moment. But before we get to that, I want to give you one more story around this whole controversy in DC and all this other stuff, because this pro-abortion group apparently has just put a bounty on justices of the Supreme Court. You know, you remember those old Westerns where there's wanted posters and you put up the poster and there's the money to capture a bad guy, you know, $50, maybe back in the day, maybe now 50,000, whatever. You have some money to capture the bad guy, and then in the bottom it's dead or alive. Okay, hopefully that's not what we're talking about here, but this is what we're talking about, except the bad guys are putting up the wanted posters, the bounty for the good guys that are on the Supreme Court, because somehow these uneducated loons stopping the judicial process is to them democracy. And I just say, Lord, have mercy. And as an aside, you may recall a couple of weeks ago when hordes of raving asylum patients roamed the streets in front of the conservative Supreme Court justices' houses in an attempt to get them to not do their job and rule on court cases. In one particular instance, which I noted at the time, a deranged man showed up in front of Justice Kavanaugh's house intending, apparently, allegedly, and even according to him, to want to murder Justice Kavanaugh and possibly his whole family. Fortunately, he turned himself in before the crime was committed, and all is well. Kind of. So now we have a report of a mob of people outside of a steakhouse where Kavanaugh was having a delicious steak. Apparently, he didn't see the video that we did from the other day where we're supposed to eat bugs instead of cows. But anyway, more power to him for eating the steak. According to reports, Kavanaugh had to escape out the back door to avoid this unruly crowd who was protesting him. As an aside, I'm really not sure what the point is. Like, tell me what the point is here. The decision is already decided. The Mississippi versus Dobbs case has already gone through, and they've ruled that Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey are unconstitutional. So protesting him at this point is just noise. They literally can't go back and re-judge the case. It's already done. So now you're just being annoying and perhaps dangerous. I mean, it's such a weird thing. What do you think is going to happen other than intimidation and just anger and violence, which apparently is all the left has left at this point, because they don't care about words. They don't care about ideas. They don't care about like having civil debates. They just want violence. So in perhaps response or perhaps to push the hate further, I can't say, this pro-abortion group called Shutdown DC offered a bounty, just like those old wanted posters, on Kavanaugh, Alito, Thomas, Gorsuch, Coney Barrett, and Roberts' sightings, presumably so they can go harass the justices, hopefully not more. We actually have no idea. If you're just listening, here is the tweet that Shutdown DC posted. DC service industry workers. So, waiters, waitresses, cab drivers. I guess there's no cabs anymore. Ubers. I guess I'm old. All right. They say, if you see Kavanaugh, Alito, Thomas, Gorsuch, Coney Barrett, Roberts, DM us with details. And here it comes. We'll Venmo you $50 for a confirmed sighting and $200 if they're still there 30 minutes after your message. So, what do they plan to do? Show up and protest? Worse? More? We have no idea. This seems like a bad thing. It's functionally a bad thing to get out in front of a a justice's house, that's actually against the law. We talked about that in previous. There are federal and local statutes that make that against the law, but nobody seems to care. Then to go out in front of restaurants and protest people, it's civilly, like, just it's bad form. Like, we don't talk about bad form very much anymore, but that's just bad form. Not to mention probably against some laws here or there, depending on what they're doing, but it's also just inconvenient. What about everybody else that's dining, or everybody else that doesn't like bugs and wanted to eat a steak at this particular time? They have nothing to do with anything, and their whole dinner is ruined too. Does this group care? No, they don't care. Does this administration care? Well, let's see what Karine Jean-Pierre, White House press secretary, answered when she was asked about these protests.
People should be allowed to be able to do that.
In a restaurant?
If it's outside of a restaurant, if it's peaceful, for sure.
Really?
Peaceful protest. Your first question to me was intimidation.
So these justices, because protesters do not agree with an opinion that they signed on to, have no right to privacy, is what you're saying.
But Peter, this is people have the right to, this is what a democracy is. People have the right
to privacy?
Of course people have a right to privacy, but people also have a right to be able to protest peacefully.
Do they? I mean, yes, there is a right to peaceful protest in the Constitution. Is this within that right? Is this the right thing? And even beyond that, like, is it good form? Is this administration, is the left, are the politicians, are the celebrities really saying this is good in all cases? I kind of think they aren't saying that. For instance, if the shoe were reversed, if Justice Sotomayor suddenly had protesters outside of her restaurant every time she eats, would that not be a national news story about how terrible the extreme far super ultra mega right is? I kind of think that it would. And then you have Pete Buttigieg, who's quite a character. I forget even what his title is at this point, like Director of Transportation or Secretary of Transportation or something like that, because he like trains when he was a kid. Anyhow, his man, I don't even know how to do this anymore. Okay, so his man said about this Kavanaugh issue in a tweet, sounds like he, Kavanaugh, just wanted some privacy to make his own dining decisions. Haha, see, the joke there is because they say that women should have privacy to make their own healthcare decisions because killing babies is healthcare. See how that works? So Kavanaugh wants his own dining decisions because he just wants to eat, because those are morally equivalent. Having dinner and killing babies, morally equivalent. Like, we literally have lost our minds, people. Lost our minds. So that is Pete Buttigieg's man, friend, / fake husband, whatever. Anyway, Pete was asked about this. Let's hear a little bit from good old Pete.
Are you comfortable with protesters protesting when you and your husband go to dinner at a restaurant?
Protesting peacefully outside in a public space? Sure. Look, I can't even tell you the number of spaces, venues, and scenarios where I've been protested. And the bottom line is this. Any public figure should always be free from violence, intimidation, and harassment, but should never be free from criticism or people exercising their First Amendment rights.
Now, I'm just going to go on a limb here. Again, he says there was a ton of times that he and his quote-unquote husband were protested. I'm going to need to see some notes on that. Like, I feel like that, again, would be a huge national story because they check a lot of boxes. They have the LGBTQA IP #++ box. He has the, gay marriage box. In public life and leftist politics. I mean, there's a lot of boxes there. I feel like we would have heard about that if that were a common occurrence that was happening. But anyway, let's just leave all that aside and say, okay, maybe he gets protested all the time. But what is a peaceful protest? And then when you get to the point where the guy with the gun outside Kavanaugh's house, apparently attempting and wanting to kill Kavanaugh and possibly his whole family, is that peaceful? And is encouraging this a good idea? Like, it's one thing to go outside a courthouse and protest the court. That kind of makes sense in certain instances. I can see that. Going to a personal residence, going to a place where somebody is having dinner, that seems like a different level of intimidation. It should feel like a different level of intimidation to you. But the bottom line, when we get down to all of this, this is all just about virtue signaling. And it's all saying, this is why we come back to theology. This is all saying that their theology, their beliefs, their faith are better than yours. All of these things about them are better than you. And then they wonder why the political climate is getting hotter. They pretend to not notice or say when we should trans the kids and let them play with grown men dressed as women, dressed as strippers, and allow birthing persons, their words, to kill babies to the point of birth. And that's all fine and good and moral and theologically correct according to their point of the aisle, and it's all righteous and wonderful. But the minute we say, hey, wait a minute, maybe having a family based on the values that are older than these 5 minutes, and maybe it's based on biology, and maybe it's based on the Bible even, or theology, all of a sudden, we're accused of instigating a culture war, and we just have to say no, just no. We were fine having families, going to church, living our lives, and we gave a lot of freedom, a lot of rope to live their lives however they wanted. But now not only do they want to live their lives, they want our freedom, and they want our assent. We're not allowed to go to restaurants anymore and say, hey, I just want to have a family, and I just want to go to a restaurant, and maybe I want to pray in public. No, you can't have any of those things. That's what this culture, that's what the left, that's what they're all saying. And when we say, hey, wait a minute, we should be allowed to do that, and we've always been allowed to do that, they say, no, you're starting a culture war, and you guys are crazy and evil and right-wing Christian nationalists. And we're like, we just want to live out our faith in private and in public, like we've had the ability and written in the Constitution the freedom to do for 250 some years at this point. But this is where we just have to continue to say no. We didn't start this culture war. We want traditional biblical values like marriage and family and children, and not drag queen brunch, which just happened, with our kids. They should be no-brainer things, and they should be classical things, but apparently they're not anymore. And apparently the normal things, according to this culture, according to the left, the politicians, the celebrities, the media, etc., having trans brunch is totally normal. Transitioning children at 10 years old or younger is totally normal. Doing drag queen story hour or public libraries or having closets at schools where kids can change from one gender into the next with their clothing styles so their parents don't know about it, that's all totally normal. But sitting down to dinner, having a family, having children the normal way, that's totally crazy, and all of that needs to be stopped. Praying for your meal in public, praying for a football game in public. Those are all crazy things that just need to be smashed down and not allowed in any place ever. This is the world we're living in, and this is the attack that's on us. And then we notice, and they say, oh no, you're just culture warriors and you just want to upset everything. No, we just want the freedoms that we had for 200 and some years and think are valuable, because they're not even grounded in the Constitution. They're protected by the Constitution because those freedoms are actually founded in biblical values. But speaking of marriage, I'll give you one more story today, which hopefully is hopeful, enlightening, and wonderful. I actually really like this story. Hopefully you do too. And this is a story about marrying religious couples who happen to be young, and how those are least likely to divorce. I love the title of this. The title of this article is The Surprising Case of Marrying Young. I just love that. Even though this comes from the Institute for Family Studies, and it has some religious bent, apparently, though I'm really not sure at this point after reading this article, they're surprised that young people who are religious, who marry young, do better in their life. I mean, this shouldn't be surprising, but again, in crazy upside down world, I guess it is not normal. So I'll read a little bit out of this article. I think it's fairly interesting. Again, maybe you will too. The article says, first, there's a common perception that the 20s are not for marriage. They're for fun. This person in the article is named Joey. Most of his colleagues in finance thought, quote, the 20s are your time to enjoy and have fun and go out. Adding, the 20s are the time to be young and free and independent, and you can have this fun, free lifestyle while still being married. Second, by marrying in the 20s, the girl, Samantha, broke the cardinal rule for ambitious professional women in New York. That rule, as feminist Jill Filipovic says, women, this is her quote, women ought not to get married before 30. This ensures women have the opportunity to successfully launch their careers and fully actualize themselves before merging with an equally successful partner and having the requisite 1 or 2 children. Sorry, I had to move into a voice there because it felt like this is inspirational. We have to talk about the inspiration of not getting married. It's just crazy town. Anyway, this is going on with the quote, marriage is supposed to be a capstone to a successful life, signaling you have arrived professionally and personally. An individual, not a cornerstone designed to launch your common life together as a family. Which is all just such garbage. And we see that bore out in the statistics of such unhappy people who wait till they're 30, 40, then get married and then can't have children and then struggle and just go from marriage to divorce, etc., etc. That's actually what the statistics are showing, not this crazy lie that you just need to focus on your career for 20, 30, 40 years and then try to get married and have a family. Sorry, it's not biological, but it's not biblical. We just talked about that in Genesis. You're supposed to find a spouse, get married, have babies. That's going to sound incredibly insulting to some of you, but the reality is that's just the standard. It's the standard because that's how it works. That's how society works. That's how marriages work. That's how families work. That's how this whole human thing gets propagated literally into generation after generation. But these crazy feminist ideas tell us that no, you just should work for your whole life and then maybe at some point have a family or figure out how to manufacture babies or something. And it just literally is not working. I talked the other day about Japan, about Europe, even about America, where the replacement rate of babies is below the level where the whole economy, the whole society can even represent itself. It can even grow. Like we're below that level as a society. We're lowering because people aren't getting married, aren't having enough children. This article goes on to say, finally, most importantly, the quote, conventional wisdom holds, as sociologist Philip Cohen notes, early marriage increases the risk of divorce. So just to unpack that for a moment, this sociologist says to marry early increases your risk of divorce. I'd like to say and go on record, that's a lie and not true, but let's look at the statistics found in this study by the Institute of Family Studies. The idea that it's best to marry around 30 or later to lower your odds of landing in divorce court. After all, the notion is young adults don't have the maturity until they're about 30 to forge a strong and stable marriage. Again, that's according to the sociologist that says get married later because it's better. Analyses indicate religious men and women who married in their 20s without cohabitating first have the lowest odds of divorce in America today, according to the Institute of Family Studies. That would seem to fly in the face of this idea that you just keep trying out partners and don't get married until you're 30 or 40 or later, and then you won't get divorced. No, actually, the opposite tends to be true. When you just have a hookup culture, when you just have a replaceable partner, replaceable spouse culture, you're going to propagate that culture because that's what you keep doing. Let's do the opposite. Let's do some generations now where you get married young and have a bunch of kids and stay together, just like we're supposed to. Jesus in Matthew 19 said, what God puts together, let no man separate. Like, let's do that. Let's not get divorced. Let's create a culture that stays married. That's the hope here. And that's what I like about this article, that even though in this article, so maybe it's not as religious as I thought, even in this article, they keep highlighting these things that it's probably better to get married later, except the statistics don't actually say that. So this article goes on to say shared faith is linked to more sexual fidelity, greater commitment, higher relationship quality. A Harvard study found that women who regularly attended church were about 40% less likely to divorce. That's a huge number. The family-friendly norms and networks found in America's churches, mosques, and synagogues make religion one of the few pillars of strong and stable marriages in America today. And again, the article that says the surprising case for marrying young. Who is this surprising? If you don't know this, like I don't know what to tell you, but this is why I'm saying it. I'm not trying to condescend in any way. If you didn't know this, listen, take note, pay attention to this. Getting married young, following after God, helps you not get divorced. It creates something outside of yourself. This should be obvious, but again, I like to state the obvious if we need to talk about that. If you have a belief outside of yourself, if you live for something outside of yourself, you have a better chance of not being selfish. Hey, there's the word of the day, right? If you don't think about yourself, you think about yourself less, you will be less selfish. I mean, this is the common sense, Sphinx-like wisdom of the day for you guys. So when you follow after God, your life is not about yourself. When you get married, your life is not about yourself. When you have kids, your life is really not about yourself, because kids will take every last bit of yourself and your pride and your energy and everything you have. Many, many parents know this. So this is an important thing. We need to focus on this thing. It's such a good thing. A couple more points in this article that I want to bring up before we close here. Many young adults today believe cohabitation is a pillar of successful marriages. One reason why more than 70% of those who marry today live together before marriage. But the conventional wisdom here is wrong. Wrong. This is according to the article. Americans who cohabit before marriage are less likely to be happily married and more likely to break up. Yes, this is what I've been saying for years, and it is entirely true. I have married a bunch of people in my role as a pastor over the years, and in my first years, a couple of decades ago, being a pastor, many of them did this the right way. In the last several years, maybe even decade, I did not have one couple who didn't live together. And this is in a Christian church. One couple, they all lived together before getting married. And it's not good. It's not good. The consequences of this are not good. This idea that you just try something out, you try out your relationship before you get married, it doesn't lead to where you think it leads. It is a lie. I'm going to say straight from the devil. It's a lie from the devil, and we got to get away from this. We got to move to the place where following God in the standards that he sets may feel like this weight, like this jail, like these shackles on you, but the guidelines that God gives you are actually intended to make your life better. And statistics even show this. That's why I bring you articles like this. It shows that not sleeping together before you get married is actually better for you and gives a better indication that you won't break up later and you'll be more happily married later. So don't focus on yourself. Focus on God. Don't focus on yourself. Focus on your spouse. Don't focus on yourself. Focus on your kids. Pour into them. And if you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. If you have kids, teach them the way of Jesus. This is the way we retake culture. This is the way that we grow people with values and family and morals and faith. So thanks for being with me today for Church Public. As always, I'm Matt Odegaard, and keep the faith. As always, thanks for being here with Church Public today. I'm Matt Odegaard. For more, go to churchpublic.com. The regular audio files are on the front page. The video files are on the podcast tab. You can subscribe and like on Apple and Spotify and Amazon and YouTube and blah, 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 whatever. But I like that you're here today. Thank you for sticking to the end. God bless, and we'll see you next time.